traditional characters, and Taiwanese identity. Today, the People's Republic of China utilizes simplified characters, while Taiwan still holds to the past, using traditional characters. What we want to know today is, does this distinction between simplified and traditional characters have a bearing on Taiwanese identity? Though efforts to simplify the Chinese writing system predate the Communist Party, the modern simplified writing system is the result of the work of the Chinese Communist Party in the 1950s and 1960s. As a result, the Kuomintang-led Taiwanese government did not adopt the mainland system. In order to explore the connection between the traditional writing system and Taiwanese identity, we interviewed several people who identify themselves as Taiwanese. The first was Jas Kao, who was born in the United States to parents who came here in the 1970s. We asked him if traditional characters had an impact on his Taiwanese identity, and if he felt they had a bearing on Taiwanese culture as a whole.
Do you think traditional characters are important to you as a Taiwanese person?
Yeah, I do, because when I was raised Taiwanese with my parents, even though it's not much different from Chinese, I guess, to some extent. But just to me, I felt like I was raised this way. I was taught these traditional characters, and so I felt like they're more pure in a sense, that as opposed to simplified, which I feel like has gone a little too far from some of the characters, in my opinion.
And do you think it's important to Taiwanese society or culture as a whole, traditional characters?
Yes, I believe so, because it's our culture. These are words that have filtered down throughout the years after being made many years ago, and now we're changing it again to something that sometimes I feel like is, like I said earlier, is really not the same as the original characters, the simplified characters, but not really the same as the traditional characters. And it's just some of these words I feel like have history behind them. We should just keep them.
Our second interview was with Camilla Xie, a Chinese teacher here at UT. She was born in Taiwan and immigrated to the US in 1985. Her parents came to Taiwan from the mainland near the end of the Civil War. As a result, she considers herself to have strong ties to both Taiwan and mainland China.
Do you feel that traditional characters are important to you as an individual or in your identity as Taiwanese?
Yeah, I grew up with traditional characters, so it is important to me. That's the form I'm familiar with the most. But characters or Chinese characters is part of my identity as Chinese, but not necessarily just traditional, because even so-called simplified characters, actually, many of them are older Chinese characters. So, so if you reframe the question, even when I was in Taiwan, when I write letters, I often use simplified characters, Taiwanese style. So, but politically, I tend to think traditional character is the one Taiwan used. That's how I taught my students, and simplify is the one that used in China mostly. So personally, I guess I don't have a very firm identity, but I'd rather say it's comfortable.
Do you think that traditional characters are important to Taiwanese society or as their cultural identity as a whole?
Yes, I do think so. I think that's culturally that's how they really differentiate, the Taiwanese differentiate themselves from mainlander. The papers and the books is all in traditional characters, so yeah, I agree. It's very important to Taiwanese people.
Great, thank you.
Our final interview was with our fellow student Mu Min, whose family has lived in Taiwan for over 200 years, and who has been to the US for his graduate work. In 2007, he came to the US to earn his master's, and he returned again in 2011 to begin working on his PhD.
So, for you personally, do you feel that traditional characters are important to your Taiwanese identity?
Much of the people of my generation grew up practicing calligraphy. Calligraphy basically based on the writing system of traditional characters of Mandarin Chinese. Also, it put a lot of emphasis on the artistic aspect of traditional Chinese characters. However, I wouldn't say that it has much to do with my Taiwanese identity, because I would say that my Taiwanese identity lies with the writing system of the Taiwanese Dai Yi, which is my mother tongue. Yeah.
Interesting. So do you think that traditional characters are important to Taiwanese society in any way?
I would say yes, and basically, as you might know, that people of China use the simplified characters in writing, and however, I wouldn't say that the difference between a Taiwanese people and a Chinese people resides in the different characters that we use, but in the need to differentiate oneself from the other. So basically, I think it's a very important part of Taiwanese society, but when it comes to the difference between Taiwan and China, I wouldn't say that it's very, very important.
Great, thank you very much.
In conclusion, we have found that to varying degrees, the people we interviewed believe that traditional characters were part of their identity as Taiwanese. In most cases, this is because they have grown up learning these characters, so it seems more familiar to them. We also found that our interviewees tended to consider traditional writing to be a part of Taiwanese culture as a whole. Most believe they represent a tie to the past, and a means for Taiwan to differentiate itself from the mainland. It is interesting to note, however, that the latter two interviewees, those with the most direct ties to Taiwan, also emphasize that this relationship between traditional and simplified characters in relation to Taiwan is a bit more complex.